One protester at Occupy Toronto? Rob effin' Ford? Canadian banking rock star? Stephen Harper's puppet strings? It's all coming up on the Animal Politics Show. Hey guys, this is the Animal Politics Show. My name's Fat Cat. It is November 5th, 2011. It's a sunny Saturday here in Toronto. People are waiting for the snow, but in the meantime, enjoying the nice weather. First of all, I just want to relay to you my experience of what happened a couple weeks ago when I took my camera and my shoes down to the corner of King and Bay Streets. What did I see there? I saw one protester holding up a sign telling people to leave the protest. Aww. I went up and talked to this guy, and he told me that he was helping the cause. He was holding up a sign telling protesters to leave the protest zone and go about a half a kilometer down the road in order to help the protest. Why, I asked him, why would he do this? And he said, well, basically it's a nicer place to have a protest. It has some grass, it has some nice trees. People can really dig in their claws and set up shop there. So I said, okay. So I walked a half a kilometer down the street myself, away from the epicenter of most likely where the protest should have been, at the corner of King and Bay. And what did I see at the St. James Park down the street? I saw people hula hooping. I saw people holding up Chairman Mao signs. I saw people holding up Ron Paul signs. I saw people meditating. I saw people giving out free hugs. I saw a plethora of different things going on at St. James Park, and I talked to about a dozen people there, and from what I could surmise, people were very confused about why they were there. There were a lot of homeless people there. There were a lot of disgruntled U of T and Ryerson and even Queens and George Brown graduates there, disgruntled because they can't find a job. So they go to a protest because they're angry at something. But from what I could gather there, most people have no idea why they're angry or what their anger should be directed at, especially this guy standing on the corner of King and Bay. He said that he just recently graduated from university and he could not find a job. So a lot of confusion, a lot of anger there. And from my own perspective, I think a lot of education has to happen before protesting occurs. Because there's no point in protesting if people have no idea where that anger and that energy is supposed to be directed. Aww. I think that what we're experiencing now in our world is a populist issue. Populist issue. That means it affects everyone. There's a battle going on all around us between tyranny and freedom. Banking tyranny on the one hand, and individual freedom on the other. It has nothing to do with left-wing and right-wing. Perhaps in the future we can talk about left-wing and right-wing, but there's no point in talking about those things now unless we have the freedom to really enact those types of political changes. So in the meantime, think about this protester directing you away from the protest zone towards a park half a kilometer away from King and Bay, the epicenter of finances in Canada. While you're thinking about this guy, here's some useless news. Useless news! So what have I been listening to For the last 2 weeks or so is page after page and radio station after radio station announcement and news stories about the mayor of Toronto, how he's embarrassed us in the face of the world because after some stunt by the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, a TV show, showed up at his house and he got a little irritated and he called the police. He called 911 because he thought something bad might happen to his family when it was just a hoax to try to get him, kind of a candid camera thing to get him to react on television. And apparently while he was talking to the 911 operator, he swore and said, I'm the F word mayor of Toronto. Don't you know who I am? Calling the person names on the other end of the line. And suddenly this becomes the most important news in the entire world. It's not Gaddafi. It's not bombing the heck out of Libya. It's not the fractional reserve banking system. It's not the offshoring of jobs from Canada. It's not the 50,000 plus people that have just lost their full-time jobs throughout the country. It's not the fact that Bank of Canada Governor Mark Carney has just been awarded, a rock star banking position with the International Monetary Fund and the BIS. No, it has nothing to do with that. It has to do with distracting you with Rob Ford calling someone and that made the front page of the newspaper. This makes me angry because people are distracted. They're dragged down into the cave. They're pushed into the matrix by stories like this. So Rob Ford, who cares if he uses the F-bomb? Who cares if he calls someone a name? We have more important fish to fry.
They just don't care.
I want to move forward now talking about Mark Carney, the governor of the Bank of Canada. The Bank of Canada, if we all remember, was set up in 1934 to help the Canadian people deal with the turmoil of the financial instability during the Great Depression. The Bank of Canada has the power to issue money in this country, but as far as I know, it only issues less than 5% of the money that's created by the nation of Canada. The other 95% is created by private banks, according to the fractional reserve system. What does this mean? Well, it means that banks can loan out an infinite amount of money that they don't have. Aww. This is the fractional reserve banking system. In other words, in 1991, 1992, probably one of the most hated prime ministers in Canadian history, a guy named Brian Mulroney, he passed a law that lowered the reserve rate, the fractional reserve rate for private banks to 0. It's only 0 in a few other countries in the world. This is why banks love Canada. Take a look around, guys. This is why banks are the biggest buildings in town. Because they can create money from nothing. That's a pretty good gig. In other words, my buddy in Vancouver goes to the bank. He gets a loan for $1 million. He goes and buys a crack shack in Vancouver that he'll have to tear down in 5 years. He spends the next 40 years of his life paying back a debt to a private institution, the money of which never existed in the first place. That's a pretty good gig. You could have nothing in your vault if you're a bank, and you can loan out money to people, and they fill your coffers. They pay back the real money. So who knows about these secrets? Bank of Canada Governor Mark Carney, who has just been elevated to the apex of financial institutions, international financial institutions through the IMF and the global banking system. CTV hails this, which is incredible. They call him a banking rock star. He's like Van Halen, or you know, he's like Def Leppard or White Lion, right? This guy is the Bono of the international financial world.